wonderful humans, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you all about what to expect from a PhD. And I've kind of covered this topic before, but this one is going to be very much the general experience, whereas what I've done before is like the first 3 months, 6 months. I think maybe I even did a year one. But this is overall kind of what to expect, the lifestyle, the workload, the social life, all that kind of things. So let's get on with the video. So I'm going to split this into 3 categories: the academics, the lifestyle, and the utilities / the realities of doing a PhD. So let's start with one that you're probably most on your mind, is the academics. What is kind of the academic workload for a humanities PhD student? I feel like there's a lot of stuff out there about what is expected of science PhD students or STEM PhD students more generally. There's a lot of YouTubers. You kind of get the idea of the days consist of lab work, and then they're doing write-ups, and they'll probably at some point, depending on their project, go on a field trip somewhere for a few months or a few weeks. But I think humanities PhDs, the day-to-day, is a lot more mysterious. I've tried to demystify that process in my day in the life videos. I'll do a little card up here. But I still think there's a lot of unknowns, and certainly, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's the same in STEM, but certainly for humanities, all our projects can be so vastly different and our day-to-days can be so different. It's kind of hard to know what you're going to expect, but I'm going to give you my best shot at explaining it. I think for me, the biggest surprise is your research is going to go in directions you didn't expect. When I started my PhD and I applied, I had no data element to my PhD. It literally started something where I was like, I'm going to keep track of the queer romances I'm considering potentially looking at for my project. And it evolved into focus groups, interviews, surveys, ethical review forms, and a 6,000 book catalogue of queer romances published in a certain decade. That came about slowly and organically. I wasn't expecting it. And as such, it vastly changed the type of work I was doing on a day-to-day basis. What I find now is that I have intense months of research, close reading, writing, and then I have months of data, admin stuff, logistics, analysing the data. And I think that was especially true in my first year, where I would oscillate a lot between the two, almost on a week-by-week basis, if not month-by-month. I think now in my second year, I'm a bit more consistent and focused, and I think that's totally normal. Don't feel like you have to have everything figured out in first year. But now I'm very much, okay, second year is my big data year. I'm doing the focus groups, I'm doing the interviews, I'm going to do the rest of the data stuff, and I'm going to try and get things written up on it. So because of that, I haven't done any close reading or critical analysis, I want to say, in 2021 at all. I'm pretty sure I haven't because of my leave of absence, and then because since then I've been doing data stuff. And that's okay. It might not look how I expected my PhD to look, but I'm enjoying it, I'm interested in the research, and that's kind of the most important thing for me. I think the other thing to remember about the academics of the PhD is it is so easy to get caught up in other stuff. And by this, I mean conference papers, article submissions, chapter submissions, projects that are sort of related but not as official as those. Like, you might be invited to do a talk, or you might be asked to just help out on this thing because you're sort of related to that. And what I've been very tactical about doing, and something my supervisor has actually praised me for and said it took her a long time to learn, so learn from me and don't repeat previous people's mistakes. That's not how the saying goes, but you know what I'm trying to say. And basically, if you are going to do a conference paper, if you're going to do a talk, if you're going to do an article, make it relevant to the research you are currently doing. Don't do it on a book that you're not including in your thesis, or on something that, yeah, you want to get to, but you haven't got around to yet. And I know that can be harder than it sounds because you plan these things so far in advance, often 6 months in advance of actually doing them, but you sort of can figure out what you're going to research in between now and then, or do it on something you've already written on. If you've already written your chapter on that topic, there is no harm in editing that down, sort of rejigging it a bit to make it a conference paper. And actually it can be really good because it means you get feedback on your research. And to give you a real kind of world example of this, I am currently focused on my data. I had just done my surveys. I've obviously got my catalogue that I've been working on for God knows how long. So my recent conference at PCA was talking about my data. That was the first time I'd analysed my data, but I'd done all the legwork, so all I had to do to write up that paper was analyse it. Similarly, the seminar talk I did in June for the University of Cardiff, I did on my data. I did a slightly different spin because I don't necessarily want to repeat the same thing, even if it is different people in the audience. But again, I was analysing my data, slightly different perspectives, slightly different focus, but I'd already done the legwork at that point of analysing the data once and already having the data in place. So I wasn't putting this whole extra pressure on myself to do something alongside all my normal PhD work. Instead, everything was culminating in this one thing. So the work I was doing for my PhD was also work I was arguably doing for these conferences and these articles upcoming that I'm working on. And I think that's really important because so many people I know who are doing PhD, they're writing articles and papers on topics that they're not researching for their PhD, and it just stresses them out so much because they basically then have to do 2 loads of research in the month that's due. And it's crazy. Just try where you can avoid that. Yes, you might have to research a little bit more if you're doing a slightly different focus or a slightly different interpretation or using a slightly different methodology, but don't do a completely different topic. I know people who have done completely different books, completely different authors, or a completely different sort of area than what they're doing for their thesis. And to me, it's crazy. Like, don't make life harder for yourself. Make it easy. Remember, it's all about working smart, not hard. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from kind of the academic of what you can expect from a PhD. You're going to have ups and downs. Your research is going to go in directions you don't expect. And if you are doing extra stuff, make it relevant. Otherwise, you're doing double the work. And that just isn't healthy, in my opinion, to do because you've only got a limited amount of time and energy to give anything. So let's move on to lifestyle. I think there is this misconception that all PhD students are lonely recluses who don't have any friends or a life outside of their research. And yes, our research does become an integral part of our lives, but in the same way that my friends who work in marketing, their job is an important part of their lives because it's what they do most days for 8 to 9 hours a day. And I think this is where actually people are very wrong about PhD students because we're not some weird alien creature. We don't just emerge and do a PhD. We have friends and family and lives before the PhD that amazingly continue. And actually it can mean that we travel a lot because often we move somewhere new to do our PhD. So I, quite a few weekends, will go see my parents, go see friends who live in different parts of the country. Obviously, pandemic made that a bit harder, but you get what I'm trying to say. You also can make friends on your PhD with other PhD students. I have made quite a few. We all met during Freshers Week. Please go to your Freshers Week. If you're not thinking about going, please go. It is honestly... Does it feel awkward? Yes, because you're like 25 potentially, if not older. I was older, and you're going to Freshers Week, which is something you probably didn't do since you were 18. But it's different as postgrad events. You'll meet other people. It's not the Freshers Week of undergrad, I promise you that. But you will make friends, whether that is people at your university or other PhD students researching your topic at other universities that you meet via conferences or you connect with on social media. I think the important thing to remember is, like when you move anywhere new, you have to give yourself time to find your community. And that community might not be with your department. It might not even be with your university. I know a lot of PhD students who, yes, they are a PhD student, but they live an hour away from their university and most of their social circle aren't PhD students. So don't go into it with this mindset of all I'm going to do is research for the next 3 years. It's not possible and it's not healthy mentally, emotionally, physically. You need other outlets and other things to do on the weekends and in your time off, because you can't research 24/7. And if you try, you will burn out, and nobody wants that. So finally, the logistics, the reality of doing a PhD. And kind of what I mean by here is the finances, the academic pressure, all the kind of stuff that goes alongside doing a PhD. And I think this is here where probably I'm the most negative, and I'm not a negative person. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm very optimistic. But I think there is a problem within academia in general, I want to say, around mental health and the insane pressure it puts on people to constantly be performing at their best, constantly producing stuff, constantly coming up with new things, constantly competing with each other. And that's not always a healthy environment. I think what has made it so much better for me is I have a supervisor who is so supportive and understanding and constantly checks in with my mental health. And I think when you're looking for supervisors, and I've done videos on this, make sure you pick someone that you gel with. I appreciate you've only got potentially 2 hours max with them, but do you get a good vibe from them? Do they, in the interview, challenge you and ask difficult questions? If they do, that's a red flag for me. Because really the interview is about getting to know you, getting to know your research. It shouldn't be about one-upping you. It shouldn't be about proving that they know more than you. And if they're already doing that, that's probably what they're going to continue to do as your supervisor. Instead, if you get someone who, yes, they ask questions that you have to think about, and they ask questions that you maybe hadn't considered before, but if they do it in a way that is welcoming and encouraging and not judging your answer, that for me is a green flag. It's a good sign. When I went to my interview, my current supervisor was amazing. There was another person who shall remain nameless, but I did not gel with them. Some of the questions they asked me felt very derogatory towards my research and basically questioning why I was even bothering doing a PhD. And they then actually walked me sort of out of the building. And I remember this because they said to me, sorry if my questions seemed a bit harsh. That's what my supervisor did to me when I was a PhD student. And those questions had made me feel awful. Like they had made me feel like my research was worthless, that my topic was not thought through. And I remember thinking, do we really want to continue this cycle of emotional abuse that we suffered as PhD students onto our PhD students? I don't think so. So if you get any vibes of that nature, or just any bad vibes that you are not willing to deal with, run. They might be the best person in their field, but if they are an asshole, they're an asshole, and you're going to have to deal with them and work closely with them for 3 to 4 years. So just think about that before you commit to a supervisor. I think the other thing to consider as a PhD student is, especially if, like me, you come back to academia after working in the world, you're going to take a financial hit. And you're also suddenly going to have a very, very flexible schedule. Now for me, this works. I like being able to manage my own time. All my jobs are freelance and based on, as long as I get the work done by X date, I can work whenever and wherever. I like that. It means I can mix and match the PhD into when I want to mix and match it into. And if I want to work on a Wednesday but take Thursday off, it's fine. As long as I get the work done that I need to get done, I can set my own hours, I can set my own lunch breaks, holidays, all that jazz. I can also work from cafes or from my bedroom or from a train station, on a train. But I know some people who don't cope with that sort of freedom in the same way, and actually they really crave a 9 to 5, which is totally fine. We're all different, but they want a 9 to 5, they want an office, they want that very distinct work-life separation. And especially during the pandemic, they found it very hard to continue working from home, as I know a lot of other people have. But just think about that as a PhD student and think about how you want to structure it. Do you want it so that you have an office? And if you want an office, what do you need to figure out or organise to do that? Do you want a 9 to 5? Do you want to kind of impose hours on yourself? And if you do, stick to them. Or do you want to do like me and some days you do more, some days you do less, but as long as you get to the end and everything's done, it's a-okay. So that's something to be aware of, especially as humanities. You tend to you're completely self-motivated, so make sure you're prepared for that. And also financially, you're not going to be earning as much money. So you've suddenly got all this free time, but you've probably got less money. Even funded PhD students are not rolling in the laps of luxury in the UK. I hope this has been useful. I just kind of wanted to reiterate some points because I know a lot of people will be starting PhDs in September or January. I think June's the other date. I always get a bit confused. I'm now technically a January start date because of my leave of absence. But anyway, as always, if you have any questions about anything I've discussed in this video, feel free to leave a comment or message me on Instagram. I will try to get back to you as quick as I can. And I'll see you on Sunday. Bye.